Have you ever noticed how the most difficult part of climbing a mountain isn't necessarily the peak, but the moment you leave the base camp? You look up, and the summit is obscured by clouds. Your pack feels heavy, your legs are already starting to protest, and you haven't even reached the first mile marker. That is exactly what it feels like to save your first $50,000. We talk about wealth as if it's a smooth, upward trajectory, a gentle climb that just happens once you start putting money into an account. But the reality is far more jagged. The first 50,000 is a psychological gauntlet. It is the phase where you are working the hardest, seeing the least amount of momentum, and questioning whether the sacrifice is actually worth the result. Most people start their financial journey with a burst of optimism. You read a book, you watch a video, and you decide that this is the year you finally get serious. You cut the discretionary spending, you track your expenses, and you start funneling money into your savings. But then, the first month passes. You look at your balance, and the number is, well, it's not what you expected. It feels microscopic. You have denied yourself the dinner out, you have skipped the upgrades, and you have lived a slightly more constrained life, only to see a number that barely registers as a shift. This is where the trap sets in. You start to compare your progress to the stories you hear online or the lives you see around you, and a quiet, insidious voice begins to whisper that maybe this doesn't work. Maybe it works for other people, but for you, in your specific situation, it feels like pushing a boulder up a hill while the ground is made of sand. The reason this first phase is so mentally taxing is that you are fighting a battle against delayed gratification without the reward of compound interest to help you out. When you are just starting, growth is linear. You put in $1, you have $1, plus a few cents of interest. You are doing all the heavy lifting. You are providing 100% of the momentum. There is no passive income snowballing yet. There is no sense of the system working for you. There is only your labor, your discipline, and your endurance. It is a period of intense cognitive load where every single financial decision requires conscious effort. You aren't operating on autopilot. You are operating on willpower, and willpower is a finite resource. When you have to exert that much force just to move the needle by a few $1,000s, it is entirely natural to feel drained, discouraged, and eventually indifferent. We often talk about the math of saving as if it exists in a vacuum, as if you are a robot processing inputs and outputs. But you are a human being living in a world of high-pressure social benchmarks and immediate desires. When you are sitting in the middle of this early struggle, you are also likely navigating the most expensive years of your life. You are perhaps establishing a career, maybe starting a family, or trying to manage the rising costs of housing and healthcare. Every dollar you tuck away into a long-term fund is a dollar you are physically removing from your immediate comfort. That creates a friction that nobody likes to talk about. It feels like you are starving your present self to feed a version of yourself that feels like a stranger 10 or 20 years down the line. But here's the shift that changes everything. You have to stop looking at that number as money and start looking at it as the price of admission. The first $50,000 isn't actually about the wealth itself. It's about the transformation of your character. It's about proving to yourself that you are the type of person who can prioritize the future over the immediate. When you hit that first milestone, you have essentially rewired your brain. You have moved from a place of reaction, where money happens to you, to a place of intention, where you are directing the flow. This is the hardest psychological hurdle because you are essentially building the infrastructure for the rest of your life while you are still working with hand tools. Consider what happens once you cross that threshold. You aren't just holding $50,000, you are holding the proof that you can change your habits. You have developed the muscle memory of living below your means without feeling like you are depriving yourself. You have learned how to handle the inevitable emergencies that life throws at you without blowing up your progress, because by now you have built a buffer. That buffer changes your relationship with your job. It changes your relationship with risk. Suddenly, you aren't just saving to save, you are saving to provide yourself with options. And options are the ultimate form of wealth. If you are currently in the middle of this stretch and you feel like the progress is agonizingly slow, I want you to know that the feeling is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are in the middle of the most critical part of the process. You are forging the discipline one that will support a much larger structure later on. If you gave someone $1 million who hadn't gone through the mental work of saving the first 50, they would almost certainly lose it because they haven't learned how to manage the psychology of wealth. They haven't learned the value of the wait. You, however, are gaining that skill in real time. You are building the foundation. You don't need to look for a shortcut because the struggle itself is the training. The moments where you feel tempted to give up, the moments where you feel like the math doesn't make sense, those are the moments where you are actually hardening your resolve. When you reach that $50,000 mark, you'll look back and realize that the money was just the byproduct. The real prize was the fact that you stopped waiting for circumstances to make you wealthy and started building the internal architecture to ensure it happens. Think about your daily routine as a series of small, quiet victories. Every time you choose to wait, every time you choose to invest in yourself rather than in a fleeting comfort, you are placing a brick in the wall of your future. It won't look like much today, and it might not look like much next month. But if you keep at it, one day you will look up and realize that the summit isn't hidden in the clouds anymore. You'll be standing on the path you built for yourself. You aren't rushing, and you aren't panicking. You are just moving forward with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly how the process works because you walked every single step of the way. So, keep going. Not because the next dollar will make you rich overnight, but because you are building the one thing that no one can ever take away from you, the unshakable belief that you have control over your own life.